I opened my eyes. It was all silence. There was no light. I was lying on my back with my face up. My mind was empty and I felt weak. After some time, when I could finally get myself up, my hands could feel the cold and humid ground under my feet, my bare feet. I walked, aimlessly, in complete darkness. I tried to touch whatever I could to find out where I was, then I figured I was walking between two cold and humid stone walls. I was in a maze. I couldn't tell how long I spent turning corners in this maze before I found myself in a long straight tunnel. Ahead of me was some faint light. I climbed and climbed the slope with all my strength. Finally, I reached a large iron gate, where a world was waiting for me outside. I lost my memories, I didn't know who I was, I had no idea why I was there. I pushed through the heavy gate to find myself somewhere in the middle of a forest. I was wearing nothing but a white one-piece dress. The scent of the flowers, the songs of the birds and the colors of nature all made me calm. Before I realized again I was hungry, thirsty and exhausted. I couldn't remember how long I walked before I was by the river. I drank from it. I also took off my dress and plunged into it to bathe with great pleasure. I continued my journey alongside the river, where I found fruit trees which I picked from to satisfy my hunger. My next hope was to find civilizations by following the river. It was near dark when I reached the village, still barefooted. It was a small farming village with less than 20 houses. The handful of farmlands were droughted with no signs of cattle. Although the village was very quiet, I was delighted to see some houses with their lights on. I approached one and knocked on the door. Knock knock. No answer. Hello, is anyone home? I shouted. No answer again. I tried on all of those with lights on, the same happened. Something is not right. Out of curiosity and weariness, I peeked into them, and found there was nobody inside the houses despite their lights. I took my tour around the village and came to a conclusion I was alone in the village. One of the houses with lights on had its door unlocked, so I pushed through the door and entered. It was a typical old village house. Everything inside, from furniture to houseware, were old and worn out. The light above the dining table was on, the water in the jug was half full, the people should have left only recently. In the kitchen, I tried to find food in the cupboard and the fridge, no luck. I entered the living room. The first thing that drew my attention was a poster on the wall. It was a poster of a faceless man, dressed in military uniform. I turned on the black and white TV, of the highest technology in the house, to find out where on earth I was. The TV had running images but no sound. I tuned through the channels, and the only reception I could get was this faceless man giving a speech on stage. Men and women, wearing the same military uniform, were clapping their hands and praising him. There were no telephone and newspapers. I thought it would be nice to find at least some new clothes and a pair of shoes. In the 2 bedrooms, I found a few unisex white dresses identical to the one I was wearing. There were also a few pairs of identical sandals in different sizes, so I took the pair which fit me best. I couldn't find any photo of the family. Telling from the sizes of their dresses, I guessed they were parents with a young child. The night got darker, and I chose the principal bedroom to spend my night. Outside the windows, the sky was clear and the stars were shining bright. There were so many questions in my head. Why did all the villagers disappear? Why were some of the lights still on when they left home? Who was the faceless man and his army? Why did everyone wear the same? Amidst these puzzles with an exhausted body, it didn't take me long to fall into deep sleep. The next morning, I set off early to continue my journey to the truth. I resumed my route alongside the river, as well as my natural diet. After walking countless distances, I saw a military camp up on a small hill not far away from me. I knew it was dangerous, I knew it wasn't the place for me. However, all I wanted was to find out the truth. So I climbed up the hill quietly until I was in front of the defensive fence. I hid in the bushes and observed. The camp was erected upon an abandoned school, situated at the edge of a village of size similar to the one I visited. The school was 2-story high and there stood 10 large military tents next to it. There was a huge playground at the front. A dozen of military vehicles were present, with a couple of them surveillancing. I couldn't believe what I saw on the playground. The militants were abusing people in the same white dress as me in the most sinful ways. They were physically tortured with all sorts of tools, and the male militants did the most unspeakable acts to the women in white dresses. Besides the laughter of the militants, I could only hear cries and screams by the abused. I asked myself, how could humans do such things to each other? Suddenly, someone tapped on my shoulder from behind. I nearly screamed and I could barely control myself. I turned around and it was a man in a green dress. He was in his 30s, wore a long beard and carried a large hammer on his back. He said to me, "Girl, it's not safe here. Come with me, quietly." I followed him going downhill, through many uneasy and hidden trails. We were at a wall of large and strange rocks. I looked back and found we were already far away from the camp. The man said, "Here we are, mind your head when you get in." He rolled one of the rocks aside and a narrow passage appeared. "After you." I crawled inside. He rolled the rock back to its original position and followed. It was dark inside. The irregular passage through the cracks was downsloping, and rocks became more and more slippery as we progressed. With his instructions throughout, we finally reached the cave. It was a large underground karst cave, where strangely formed stalactites were hanging from its ceiling. Water was dripping from their tips to create a beautiful harmony. A green subterranean river was flowing through, with faint daylight shining from the cracks on the ceiling. Its surface became a mirror of this magnificent creation. Unbelievably, there were inhabitants too. Tents had been set up around the place. People were doing their cooking and washing. Children were running and playing freely. A small solar energy system is up and running. There were at least 100 people living here, all of them wearing green dresses. The man led me to one of the tents at the center. A group of people came out and welcomed me. A charming middle-aged woman, who looked like their leader, said to me, "Welcome to the cave. Please sit down and help yourself to some food." Then a little girl bought me a bowl of boiled vegetables and a mug of soup. "Thank you," I replied and started enjoying them. The woman introduced herself by name and as the leader in the tribe, then went on to ask my name. "I am suffering from amnesia. I don't know who I am," I answered. Everybody was silent, but strangely, they didn't look too surprised. I continued on to tell them my little journey from another underground, and they followed by telling me what was happening in this place. We are on an island which is part of an archipelago consisting of 8 islands. Governed by a single ruler, we used to live self-sufficiently in peace with our fishing and farming activities. 7 years ago, a military coup took place in our neighboring country, where the army chief seized control of their government. He is a dictator and he runs the country with authoritarianism. Due to the preceding civil war and their ignorance in the economy, their resources were depleting. One day 5 years ago, they invaded our archipelago for our resources. With our limited weapons, we lost our battle and were since occupied by them. Explained to me by the leader. "Oh, that's terrible," I said. An old man, who was sitting next to the leader, said, "I used to own a restaurant next to the town hall, but they took over all local businesses and confiscated all our personal wealth. Now everyone owns nothing but very basic stuff to live poorly. They made us their slaves for catch from the sea and crops from the farms. All the catch and crops have to be handed to them, and they redistribute only a little to us just to keep us alive and continue to produce. If any of us disobey, they will take us and punish us with violence." A young woman of strong build added in rage, "They're all armed and we are not. These bastards do whatever they want as entertainment, like my sister was taken for no reason. They also try to brainwash us to avoid us from rebellion. They close down all the schools and disconnect us from the outside world so we don't gain any knowledge. During the mass confiscation, even our clothes were taken. We can only wear the white dress they provide, no accessories or underwear allowed. This is a way to diminish our individuality and avoid us from hiding weapons in our clothes. Of course, we dyed them green here with plants to become our protective color in the forest. Worst of all, we are forced to worship this fucking army chief pretending to be a god who feeds us daily." The man who took me here said, 2 weeks ago, a team wearing masks started visiting villages by phrase and sprayed unknown chemicals on us. People started to be amnesiac, which worked as part of their plan. I said, "Gosh, that's the reason why I have lost my memories." The man replied, "Yes, very likely, and it caused a few mass escapes in the villages too. You were probably one of the luckier ones who made it, like we did some times ago. There exist more similar tribes in the archipelago now." I asked curiously, "How do you know all these things happening outside?" The man replied with a smile, "We fishermen use shortwave radios at work. The tribes now use these secret frequencies to communicate with each other." The leader said with great determination, "This bonding amongst us will be the foundation to our revolution." All of a sudden, I heard a loud gunshot.